This week we're still in the book of 1 Samuel, but we're in chapters 16 through 17, and we're talking about David and Goliath. Now God told the prophet Samuel, we listened and we learned about Samuel last week. Let's see what Samuel's going to have to do with this story. So God told the prophet Samuel to travel to the town of Bethlehem. God said to him, "You will find a man named Jesse, and I have chosen one of his sons to be the new king." Samuel did as God asked, and when he got to Bethlehem, he asked Jesse to bring his sons to him. Samuel shook his head. "No," he said, "the one God has chosen is not here. Do you have any more sons?" "And yes," replied Jesse, "David the youngest is still tending the sheep." Jesse sent for David, and as David approached, God said, "He is the one." And Samuel told Jesse that one day David would be the new king. You can imagine how surprised Jesse was that his youngest son was going to be king one day. Now David was a very good boy, and he liked to run, jump, and play like other little boys. And David also loved to play his harp and sing songs while he cared for his sheep. One day Saul, the king of Israel, did not feel very well, and he sent one of his helpers to Jesse. The helper said, "Jesse, the king wants your son David to play his harp and sing for him." "The king will not eat, and he will not talk with anyone. He thinks that David's music will make him feel better." So Jesse was pleased with the king's request. So Jesse sent David and a donkey loaded with wonderful gifts to give King Saul. And the king liked David very much. Soon David's music filled the whole palace. The music made the king feel better right away. And the king said, "David, there is no one in the kingdom who can play the harp like you." Can you see the harp that he's holding in his hands? It's a musical instrument that has strings that you use the strings in your fingers to make the music. Now one day an enemy army came to take over King Saul's land, and the king called for the people to make an army. They would protect the land, and the three of David's brothers joined King Saul's army, but the king did not ask David. The king thought David was too young and too small to be a soldier. "I must send you home, David," the king said. "You helped me so much by playing music, but I do not want you here during the fighting. My helper will take you home." David was not happy at all. He wanted to be with his brothers and fight the enemy. And when he got home, he told his father, "I can fight. Remember when I saved the sheep from the lion?" "Yes," David's father said patiently. "I do remember, but I need you here at home to help tend the sheep." He knew his father was right, but David was still unhappy. So Jesse knew young David had a good heart, and he called to David and said, "Your brothers have been away for a while. They will need more food." David's heart jumped. He was excited about going to see his brothers. He missed them, and he wondered what was happening at the battle. Very early the next morning, Jesse loaded up a donkey with food, and David set out on his journey, and he got closer to the valley, and he could see where King Saul's army had set up camp. And as he came closer, David could see the two armies as they faced off against each other. King Saul's army was on one side, and the enemy's army was on the other. David finally arrived at Saul's camp, and he ran to his brothers and said, "Father sent me to bring you food." Now, just as David greeted his brothers, some of the soldiers shouted out loud, "There he is! There is Goliath!" Puzzled, David looked to see what they were talking about, and on the other side stood the biggest man he had ever seen. He was coming out of the enemy camp. The giant was almost 10 feet tall. He was covered with armor from head to toe, and the giant looked towards King Saul's tent. Then the giant roared, "I am Goliath. I will fight any of you. If you beat me, our army will be your slaves. But if I beat you, you will be our slaves forever." King Saul's soldiers looked at Goliath, and they shook with fear. But the giant did not scare David. The soldiers even heard little David say, "I am not afraid. I will fight the giant." And the soldiers told the king what he said. Now I want you to look closely at this picture. The giant Goliath is in the middle, and look how much taller he is compared to the other men beside of him. Even the tents behind him. He was huge. Now the king heard someone wanted to fight the giant, and the soldiers brought David in front of the king. King Saul asked David, "Are you the one who wants to fight the giant?" David said, "Yes, King Saul." The king said, "David, are you just a young shepherd boy? You're not really trained for battle." David said, "The job of a shepherd is to protect his sheep. I have saved my sheep from a lion. With God's help, I can save us from the giant." No one else wanted to fight the giant, so the king agreed to let David fight Goliath. King Saul wanted to protect David, so he gave the boy his armor to keep him safe. And after trying it on, David said, "Your armor is too heavy for me. I must fight him on my own way. God will help and protect me." So here you can see David talking to King Saul, and in the back you see big Goliath. And this over here is a picture of when the king gave his armor to David, but it was way too heavy for him being a young boy. So then David ran over to a nearby stream. He chose several smooth stones to use with his sling, and David placed one of the stones inside the sling, and then he ran back. "I am here to fight you, Goliath," David shouted, and when the giant saw David, he laughed. "Little boy, you are like a little grasshopper to me." Goliath continued his roar. "Do you really expect to fight me? Do you think I'm a dog and you can beat me with your sticks and stones?" David looked closely at the giant. He was covered with heavy armor. David found a spot on his forehead where he could take aim. "I'm not afraid of you, Goliath. You come with your shield and sword, but I come with the strength of God," shouted David. Now this is when David was looking for smooth stones. So David's words made Goliath angry. He reached for his sword, and King Saul's army was silent. They watched David as he ran towards the giant. He swung his sling over his head, and round it went. Then he let the stone fly. It flew straight into Goliath's forehead, and Goliath fell down. It flew, and he fell down. Wow, can you imagine this? A small stone thrown by a little boy that took down a giant. Now King Saul's army cheered out loud. "We have won the battle," they shouted. "David has defeated Goliath." And when the enemy saw that Goliath had been defeated, they began running away. King Saul's army chased after them. After the battle was over, the king called David in front of the soldiers. "David," said King Saul, "you were not afraid. You trusted God, and he gave you the strength to defeat the giant Goliath." Everyone cheered for David. David thanked God for giving him the courage to fight the giant and win. Wow, can you imagine how scary that must have been? But David, he had the faith that God was going to help him win this battle. Well, I hope you enjoyed this story and hope you're following along in your Bible at home. See you next time. Have a great day.